So when we first started, we would have been very close to the first artisan. So we would be classified as an artisanal chocolate shop. And so essentially that means that everything that we make is handmade. We do have a lot of machinery that assists us, but all of the mixing and things like that we really is all done by humans as much as possible. Because at the end, I always feel that, so since I think it was Love and Chocolate, the thing that we teach in with our apprentices and that is the concept that you know, grandma can cook a roast, you know, not roast beef, sorry, I didn't say that. So grandma can cook a dinner and overcook everything, but it still tastes good because she made it with love. And that's, you know, and then I've also been in restaurants where technically the food is absolutely perfect, it looks brilliant on the plate, but it has no heart. It's just, technically it doesn't have that. So that's the one thing that we really try and instill with our team members, is that you have to be really conscious when you're making the chocolates, because that's the only thing that changes from it being made by a human as by a machine. So that would be just sort of when we're talking about the love. If you come in pissed off, it's not really going to translate well into the chocolate, so we have to, you know, work through that. So what we do is, our focus is we buy the chocolate from a manufacturer, so it already comes to us in its finished state. What we do is we take that chocolate and then turn it into products. So in the entire chocolate market, there's many different areas that companies can go. One being bean to bar, where you take the beans and you manufacture them that way. The other ones, we prefer to take the chocolate and turn it into really great fillings and things that we love to make. So we'll make sculptures, we'll make all sorts of items like that. I just really, you'll notice my daughter one day, we were having a dinner party, and she said, "Dad, put your hands on the table." So I put my hands on the table, and she put her hand over my hand and said, "Okay, now Dad, speak." And I couldn't talk because without waving my hands, I was completely flummoxed. I just love it. So anyway, that's one thing that that's just, my hands are, I'm an artisan, I'm very tactile, so when I do things, it's always feel sort of that way. So if you see me wave my hands around, that's why. So our focus is then that we wanted to take the chocolate and then use as many local and as many organic products as possible to translate into the finished products. So the one thing is that chocolate is grown, obviously not anywhere near here, but what we wanted to do is incorporate as many products from here in everything that we did. So that's where we started dehydrating our own blueberries, cherries, apricots, pears, and sort of working in that regard. I, very early in my career, ran across an organic farmer, Natty King from Hazelmere Organic Farm, and she was the first person who taught me about dehydrating organic fruit, because she had a bunch of daughters. She had 4 daughters, that this is what she would put in their snacks. The sad part is that I just went to one of their, on Sunday, a 36th birthday for one of these young daughters that I met at 12, and she's now 36, so it was like, oh my God. Anyway, so that's sort of our main focus, is that we just really like to incorporate as much local into everything that we can do. So that's the same thing, sourcing, packaging, and all of that things. The sad part about chocolate is it's got to compete on shelves with other things, and one has to buy into the entire packaging realm. But I'm kind of anti-packaging, and it's kind of a weird juxtaposition for me, or a really tricky thing that we've had to navigate throughout the years, is how to package, still have it be saleable, but not over-package, and it's a very tricky balance to find in that whole thing. So what we discovered was that, so dark chocolate is vegan. So any dark chocolate has no animal products, it's completely vegan. So what would many, many years ago, we had certain products that were completely dark, but we might have put a milk chocolate line on it or something like that, and we found people coming in asking for vegan chocolate. So we went, oh, okay, we'll just not put a line on some of them, and we'll keep them in the back just so if people ask for it and all of that, you know, when so that we were prepared when they came. Over the years, what has translated is that we now have probably 10 to 12 to 14 items that are vegan that we can sell in the store. The interesting thing is that we'll get non-vegans see a sign that says vegan truffle, and they'll say, oh, I'll take one of those. So it's an interesting, we found that an interesting sort of trend in the entire market in that way. So for us it was it's an easy market for us to create things that way because it doesn't change anything that we do and it doesn't take away from certain other things that we do in that way. Now, what I end up doing is I end up talking a lot for things that I do, so it's more that at any point in time, if you have any questions, I can go down any sort of path. I just really love chocolate, and what really attracted me to chocolate at the start was that the initial stages of chocolate processing is pretty much the same way that the Aztecs would have done it since whenever they started doing it, but for many, many years. So it's essentially the cocoa bean, they would roast it over a fire, they would grind it up, they would add water to it, and they would make a drink from it. And that was how chocolate was first sort of done, was that the Aztecs drank that. When the Spaniards came over and took that back, that's how in Europe it started out as a drinking chocolate. So all chocolate was drunk that way. The difficult part is that the cocoa bean itself is 50% cocoa butter. So if you grind it up and you were to add water, it always is going to have a layer of fat on the top. What they discovered was to make an edible chocolate that you could actually eat that wasn't crumbly, you had to add additional cocoa butter. So the interesting thing when you talk about cocoa solids, when you've seen on bars where they have the percentage, what that actually refers to is the cocoa bean and cocoa butter. So it's very possible for you to taste a 64% cocoa solids chocolate that tastes more bitter than a 70% cocoa solids chocolate, because the 70% cocoa solids could have way more cocoa butter in it. And cocoa butter is pretty much neutral. It doesn't really have any flavor. So that between those two things, it's there. We have a 70% chocolate that's actually a reduced fat chocolate that we use for ice cream. And what it is they've taken out all of the cocoa butter from it, so it has a really good intense flavor. So when you make ice cream, the cocoa butter freezes solid, and so when you get the chocolate ice cream, it's like a brick. And you got to leave it out for like half an hour for it to melt enough for you to really have a nice mouthfeel. So that's the idea. That one, when you eat it, it's like pasty and chocolatey, but it's the same as the 70% cocoa solid that you eat that can taste quite sweet.